Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from GreenSpark Solar, serving the greater Rochester and Finger Lakes regions for over 20 years. GreenSpark Solar is dedicated to helping people power their homes and businesses with local solar power and battery storage backup. More at greensparksolar.com.
From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Our connection this hour was made on Saturday evening in the nation's capital, where tanks rolled down the streets and Army helicopters flew overhead. A military parade marked the 250th anniversary of the United States Army's creation. The parade served as a tribute to the armed services, starting with George Washington's Army, officially the Continental Army, during the Revolutionary War of 1775. And while some bleachers were not full, the event did draw thousands of spectators from around the country. It happened to fall on President Trump's 79th birthday, and he helped conclude the evening with a series of remarks. He defended the $45 million price tag for the event, saying, quote, "Every other country celebrates their victories. It's about time America did too," end quote. Service members dressed in historic garb, some on horseback. There were nods to service members from decades past, including World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, and the global war on terror in the first 2 decades of the 21st century. The Hill reports, quote, "What drew the largest cheers were the vehicles used from World War II all the way up to the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, starting with the M4 Sherman medium tank that gave way to Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, Abrams tanks, Stryker armored personnel carriers, and howitzers," end quote. And the Hill goes on to say, the parade capped off with a route of troops representing the Army's future, with 250 new recruits or soldiers who were re-enlisting, pausing before Trump to raise their right hand and have their commander-in-chief swear them into service, end quote. We've had a surprisingly difficult time on Connections finding veterans to come on the show and talk about this event, so we are inviting your feedback now. The president says he wants to highlight the military's service and he thinks the parade can be a valuable recruiting tool. He also says it will instill patriotism in more Americans. Let us know what you think this hour, and let me welcome our guests in studio. John White is a former infantry captain with the United States Marine Corps, serving from 1966 to 1973, 1967 in Vietnam. John, welcome back. It's nice to see you.
Thank you, Evan. Good to be here.
And welcome back to Lou Wayne, who is a Vietnam veteran who served in Vietnam 1968 and 69. Is that correct? Welcome back to you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Evan.
I'm going to start with you, John. Just some general thoughts about the parade. Did you watch the parade, and what did you think about the parade?
Just a little bit of it. I couldn't, just from a time standpoint, couldn't watch 2 or 3 hours of it, but kind of dove in and out of it and watched a little bit of it. And my general thought, actually before the parade started, I was not a fan. I was not really in favor of it. So I watched it with a little bit of a jaundiced eye, just in terms of being critical, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. And portions of it were very, very impressive. And I think true to the cause of recruitment or patriotism, held up to that. I mean, anytime a band marches down the street with John Philip Sousa, your heart rate has to go up. And so that was a very, very patriotic thing with the bands. Some of the other things, maybe not so much.
Okay, and why? Tell me about that second part, the not so much. What part? You talk about what you liked. What part rubbed you the wrong way?
Well, I don't know that it necessarily rubbed me the wrong way in terms of their marching and being in the parade. It was the idea of it happening at all. I think that I was challenged with, and once again, the amount of money. The time, the energy, the effort, a couple of months of training for these troops that work so hard every day, all the time, and to pull them off for all of the training and then the actual event itself on Saturday, I just didn't think that was an appropriate use of resource.
Okay. Lou, what were your general thoughts about the parade, and did you get to see any of it?
Well, in the honor of full disclosure, I did not watch the parade.
By choice?
No, not by choice. I saw clips of it, but then once I got invited to come here, I took the time to look it up and watched it. It's an hour and 37 minutes, by the way, John. And my opinion, changed from the idea of the parade, which I was not in favor of, for all the reasons that John mentioned. But it turned out to be not just a parade, but a history lesson. And I think that might have been worthwhile for a lot of people. There were things in there that struck a chord with me, and I would have to say that it was long and rather boring. I don't know that we needed that many different divisions to be represented and that many troops in camo uniforms. And I dare say that the guys marching on the ground didn't seem to be having as much fun as all the guys that were riding in various vehicles, be it tanks or Strykers or Bradleys. They were all having a great time. I don't know how long the parade was, how far they had marched at that point, but one of the things that gave me a great sense of relief was that this was not a spit-polished corps of people designed specifically to march in parades. These were just plain ordinary soldiers out there marching along, and it wasn't the goose stepping of the North Koreans and
That's right.
that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I read several comments that someone commented on the fact that our boys don't know how to march. They don't know how to march. Those North Koreans can march, and our guys just rumble along. And I have to agree that it was not a well. I don't want to say coordinated, but it was a more casual march.
And you liked it like that.
Well, I liked it like that because we're not wasting a whole lot of taxpayers' money teaching guys how to march.
Lou, I have to say I'm with you on how strange the criticism, and the criticism comes in a lot of different directions, but to the extent that you're talking about, I heard some of that too. North Korea is a spectacle, often meant to honor a dictator. So they goose step there. They do a lot of that training.
Yeah.
They want the world to see that. I'm with you that it would have felt strange if that's what it looked like. But you found comfort in we weren't mirroring something like that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I would have to say that the biggest distraction to me was the heavy metal music. I said, can't I just turn that off somehow? That was just awful.
Well, there were lots of different music there, Lou. I hear you, but some parts of the parade route, perhaps. I want to read an email from a listener named Chaz, who is pointing out, I think in his email, that some of the criticism was, well, this was the president's birthday. Was this too much about one president? Here's what Charles says. He says, we knew when the 250th Army's birthday was going to be, and according to the Stars and Stripes, initial preparation was 2 years in the making. So I do think some of the hysteria is just that, hysteria. From a warfighter's perspective, this meant a bunch of privates and NCOs had weekend duty and probably spent the week leading up to the parade practicing drill and ceremony while getting yelled at for not marching with the same level of precision as the old guard. As a source, one time we had a brigade-level change of command ceremony, and rather than bring the Cav and FA guys down from Germany to march, they just brought the BCs and CSMs down to Italy and pretended the infantry companies were the whole brigade. So I'm going to assume that most people involved didn't actually enjoy it, although it is the Army. That happens quite a lot. That's from Chaz. What do you make of that, John?
I think he's dead on, actually. I think he's spot on. One of the things that you talk about, especially with North Korea, and I'll throw in Russia and China as well, in terms of their military might parades. They are a spectacle, and they are there to honor the dictator. And one of my feelings, political as it may be, is I think this was a parade to honor our president. And I think that had an awful lot to do with it. In some cases, overshadowing the actual birthday of the United States Army. And I'll agree with Lou. The history lesson and some of those issues were wonderful. But all of those troops that weekend, the weeks before, practicing and training, these folks have an awful lot to do and an awful lot of important missions to address. And marching 8 blocks down Constitution Avenue, in my opinion, wasn't one of them.
Would you have felt different if this wasn't on the president's actual birthday? Do you think that was the wrong day to do it?
I think it was the wrong day to do it. I don't think I would felt differently. I think it would have been done differently, quite frankly. There were too many cutaways and too many focus points, I think, on the president. In fact, it was kind of funny when the Golden Knights came down, which was spectacular to watch the parachutes come down. And those guys are just skilled and professional and wonderful. But to present the flag to the president, I don't know. I was of the ilk that they should have presented the flag to the chief of staff of the Army, and I don't know.
And is there, for you, John, and I'll let Lou jump in here too, but is there a sense of irony, I guess, that this president, just in his own service, didn't serve and sort of avoided armed service, whether or not we believe the words of John Kelly, his former chief of staff, who said that he denigrated the service of others. Does that change the tone of it to you? Do you think about that at all?
I do think about that. And I think about some of the actions versus the words. And when you take a look at the recent DOGE cuts and things of that nature, once again, some serious cuts at the Veterans Administration. And the serious cuts just in the general population of government employees, a lot of those folks are veterans. And they are now on unemployment, out of work, or seeking alternative careers. And so some of those actions override some of the words, in my opinion.
Lou, did you have any discomfort with the president's being featured in this?
Well, I think that certainly the hype was an awful lot about his birthday and about him. Quite frankly, my observation was he looked to be incredibly bored by the whole thing. His eyes were nearly closed many times, and
maybe he was just concentrating.
I think he might have been expecting more like what North Korea presents in a military parade like that, and he didn't get Class A uniforms. He got fatigues, and maybe that may have rubbed him a little bit the wrong way. I don't know. That was just kind of an observation. But the fact that he has never been in the military and has denigrated the military on a number of occasions makes me wonder how sincere any of his remarks were. He stayed absolutely on script. I don't know how his managers were able to accomplish that. He stayed right on script, and it was a good script, but he presented it in such a dull fashion that it was just kind of a droning on affair. I think someone else who was a little more impassioned about the military might have presented that in a much livelier, more presentable fashion.
We're not going to date anybody here, Lou. You're around the same age as the president. Do you feel like he understands the service that you provided for this country?
Oh, absolutely not. I do not think he understands it, and I don't think he cares.
John?
Well, one of the things that I tried to glean through all of this was the underlying purpose. And when you look at his mention of other countries have their celebrations of their victories and this, that, the other thing. And I'm thinking about, once again, North Korea, China, Russia.
May 9th in Russia every year.
Yeah. And I just wonder if the president's real issue here was to demonstrate power to Iran, to be the spectacle, as you said. But when I look at it, and I'll take Lou's word of boring, I got to tell you, the Russians and the North Koreans and the Chinese put on a much more impressive parade than we did. Their armament and their marching, and it is a spectacle, and it's meant to support or defend themselves or just align themselves with other countries that they've got the power. I don't think we really accomplished that in this parade. And if that was part of the underlying issue to send a message to the world, we're strong, don't mess with us, I'm not so sure we got there.
Well, let me read a couple of very different emails that have come in. Joe writes to say, Evan, again, and I don't. This hour is not meant to be, by the way, overtly political. This is not. We're just talking about the parade. I understand politics seems to inflect everything these days, but I'll read the emails here. Joe says, the left loves to scream about Russia, Russia, Russia. Maybe they can learn something from Russia's annual parade, which shows strength and pride. When did it become a bad thing to show strength and pride in your country? So what Joe's talking about is the May 9th demonstration of Russian might. They show their nuclear warheads. And it is meant to be not just a spectacle, kind of a frightening spectacle is what it's supposed to be. And Putin is at the center of that every year. Joe is saying, what is wrong with showing strength and pride, Joe?
I don't think there's anything wrong with showing strength and pride. I will say that the troops, and I know some that are still on active duty and some that were recently off active duty, I think the pride factor is there. I think they're all proud to serve. I think putting them on display was something that's, I don't know that that's American. The core values of the military are, honor, courage, and commitment. And nowhere in there is we're going to show off from that standpoint. I don't think personally we've ever needed to show off. We never had that need. And so a little bit, I don't disagree. The pride and the commitment that he mentions is fine. But I don't think we needed to do it in that fashion. And I don't think, Evan, the historical vehicles, the historical lessons, things like that, I don't think that really demonstrated high strength.
Okay. But what I hear from you, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you think we should feel strength and pride. It doesn't have to be demonstrated in a way that emulates Russia, China, others.
Correct. We didn't need to do that.
Okay. Lou, what do you make of Joe's email about Russia?
Well, I agree with John. I don't think we have to march down the street in order to show our strength. I think military strength comes at the negotiating table, where things are discussed and it's made clear that the power is there, and let's use that to come to some agreements, whatever those agreements need to be. But I don't think we have to march down the street to show that. And I think, although I took great interest in the older vehicles, there was a World War II half-track in there, and my father drove a half-track in World War II. That really struck a chord with me. That was the highlight of the parade as far as I'm concerned. But I just showing our muscle in a parade doesn't sit right. I just don't think we need to do that.
Well, Lou, your point earlier that the president, and his remarks, by the way, were about 8 minutes long. Best we can tell, he did stay on script. You're right about that. His remarks in the Saturday parade were very different than his remarks. I think he was at Fort Bragg.
It was Fort Bragg.
Absolutely.
Fort Bragg, when he's got soldiers in uniform for an audience, and he is goading them into laughing or mocking or cheering very partisan comments about political parties, political candidates, former candidates, individual politicians. And he's kind of whooping them up. And it was quite a scene. In fact, Alan, if you just sent the email, I'll get your email in just a second about some of that. But that was a very different setting. And the president on Saturday was on script. Did the Fort Bragg stuff, did that bother you?
Oh, absolutely.
Why?
What I want to know is who were the commanding officers and what part did they play in that horse pucky?
Thank you for
That-
editing yourself.
That was really shameful, absolutely shameful. And I commend those soldiers that declined to take part in that.
What did you make of that, John?
I was, I almost looked at it as expected, and I didn't expect much, but the vitriol coming back to the former politicians, the former president, all of that to rile up the troops, totally inappropriate. And whether it was on or off script, I have no idea, but not the proper place. And let me come back to the pride issue for a minute. Most of the folks that I encounter, and I'll explain a little bit about that, the pride that they have in terms of serving America and serving it through the armed forces is phenomenal. And it's just, it's wonderful to watch, and it's wonderful to see and just to feel it in the air. I get very, very much involved with the ROTC units here in town. And I'll tell you, those young folks, men and women, going through the ROTC program and getting ready to be officers in the military, the pride just bursts out of them. One of my highlights of the parade is when you watch the West Point cadets come down. I mean, there's a example of pride right there. The ROTC units that marched, the future, wonderful folks, committed to it. But to have the president take issue with all the formers at Fort Bragg, totally inappropriate.
You think it puts the men and women in the audience in a bad position?
I think it puts the men and women in the audience in a bad position. It puts their commanders and their leaders in a very, very bad position. And once again, they've sworn to uphold and defend and to support the Constitution. And the president is their commander-in-chief. And as a result, those commanders, after those troops get all riled up about something, they have an issue to deal with.
But explain a little bit more, John, especially for our audience today, who hasn't served and maybe is not as clear as you feel about the code, about the expectation of how a president will behave in front of active service members, about what the commanding officer's responsibility is. If someone says, look, yeah, he's a politician. He's the president, though. He can say what he wants. It's not a big deal. Why do you expect him not to go into those partisan or political directions based on that audience? Why does it matter?
Well, I think, I'll go back to an old coaching issue. You get a lot more performance out of your troops by encouraging them and being loyal and faithful to them versus tearing them down and telling them what they're not doing right. And I just kind of look at the current climate as an awful lot of a negative commentary about what things aren't going right instead of the real encouragement and the support for folks that are doing a real hard job.
Yeah, I take that point. I just think, some people were, some commentators online were pointing out, today is 10 years since this president got into his first presidential campaign, came down that elevator, and it was just a few months after that he made comments about Senator McCain and his service that a lot of pundits thought, well, it's going to end his presidential campaign. He talked about how John McCain was a loser and he likes people who don't get captured. And, John McCain's service, for whatever you think of his politics, what he did for this country, what he sacrificed, what he endured, seems to me impregnable.
A true American hero.
I mean, I would think so. And so, but that didn't end the campaign. He won that election and has been elected again now and has the support of a lot of veterans. And so does that confuse you, John, that those remarks about Senator McCain didn't seem to do lasting damage?
It does concern me. And there were comments following that about Gold Star families and some of those issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as Lou pointed out earlier, there have been some, unfortunate things, said there. However, the The issue about patriotism, and you and I have been there a little bit in the past. I think patriotism in America is high, quite frankly, and I think that
Right now, you think it's
right. I think it's excellent, actually, and I know just the amount of people who have regard and respect for those who have served and are serving is higher than it's been since I came back from Vietnam, and I think it's terrific. You get so many people, whether it's at the grocery store or the gas station or just wandering through the airport, that if you've got a hat on that says you're a vet or anything to indicate that, it's thank you for your service, and that's higher now than it has been. So I have a lot of faith in America in terms of their patriotism. I don't think we need to find, I don't know, intangible ways to fire that up. I just don't think we need to do that.
Yeah, my father, who served in Vietnam, he was an MP, and if he sees someone wearing a hat with a pin, he'll stand up in a diner and walk across the room and just point to the hat and shake someone's hand.
Yep.
Means a lot to him.
Yep.
And you see, and of course, he was part of, as both of you were, a class of service at a time when coming back to this country wasn't easy. So he endured a lot of that too.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear, by the way, that you feel that the climate for veterans is more embracing.
I think it is. I think it is. Also, the services, and I'll give a shout out to the VA. The services that we get as veterans is outstanding. And, whether that's going to get cut back, whether service levels or services themselves get cut back, I don't know. Who knows? But I can tell you the amount of support that we get as veterans from the Veterans Administration is wonderful.
Do you feel that way, Lou?
I've actually interfaced very little with the VA, so I really don't feel like I can comment on that.
In general, though, do you feel the climate's pretty supportive of veterans?
The climate is definitely supportive of veterans. I think the patriotism is definitely higher than I recall, even 10 or 15 years ago. I think it's more noticeable than it was back then. Going back to for a minute to the president's rally at Fort Bragg, it was totally off color for him to rouse the troops in that fashion. That is absolutely not leadership in any way, shape, or form. And it was just appalling to me, that whole episode.
Well, here's an email from Alan regarding the parade. He says, Evan, what exactly does the president want to be celebrating these days? It's a question worth asking. After all, last week he said he was restoring the names of Army bases named for Confederate generals. Top of the list, Robert E. Lee, the ultimate traitor. Why are we doing this? And more importantly, where is the outrage? Living veterans like myself should be appalled. The White House is lifting up the memories of people who wanted to destroy our country and kill Americans. That is from Alan. Alan is, again, referring to a number of bases that are going to get names back. Pickett,
Hood,
Lee. And the president says we're restoring what was changed. So, John, do you have any issue with the naming of the bases?
No, I don't actually. Some of those original names, once again, in their time and in their place, they were patriots. Although we look at them now and we say maybe they were the enemy, but not to them. At that point, they were for their cause, and some of them are worth remembering. Tearing down statues, renaming bases, those types of things. Rewriting history in 2025 is not something I'm in favor of.
Okay, so you're okay with the restoring of the names of those bases?
I am okay.
Okay, Lou?
Well, I think one of the things I think is curious that I recently read that for every one of these bases, they went back and researched the name, and they found soldiers with that same name.
That's true.
And they're claiming that that's who the base is now named.
So what Lou's talking about is Hood, Pickett, Lee. These are names. There are other people who have served, often very admirably, who fought for the Union side. And so there is a Lee, who's not Robert E. Lee, who the White House can say, well, actually, we're calling it, Fort Lee, but it's a different Lee, even though the president kind of gave the game away when he said we're restoring Robert E. Lee. Right. But part of John's point is it's not whether you supported Robert E. Lee then or now. It's about saying we're not going to be shying away from history, that we don't have to tear down a statue or rename a base. We need to understand history and not run from it. What do you think, Lou?
Oh, I think that's absolutely true. I'm pretty much okay with taking down statues, but I think the history has to be taught and drummed into people's heads of what that was all about. There are different thoughts on what really caused the Civil War, but in actuality, there was only one cause.
Well, after we take our only break of the hour, I want to ask both of our guests about the current state of, I'm not asking them to get in the heads of a 16, 17, 18-year-old, but I want to know what they think about recruiting and convincing young people. How do you feel about this country? Would you serve this country? What's the value in serving the country? What even today, no matter your age, if you served, did that do for you? How has that changed you in different ways? And these are important points here because part of the parade, which, you heard our guest talk about the things that really were enjoyable and parts of the history and maybe teaching or reteaching. Let's talk about recruitment. Let's talk about the future of service in this country. John White is here, a former infantry captain with the United States Marine Corps from 1966 to 1973. Lou Wayne is here, a Vietnam veteran himself, and we're going to come right back on Connections.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Bob Johnson Auto Group, proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson. Believing an informed public makes for a stronger community. BobJohnsonAutoGroup.com.
This is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. I want to start this portion of the program by asking Lou Wayne and John White, who have served this country in uniform. Lou, that was decades ago. That was more than, I'm trying to do some math here, 57 years ago that you served in Vietnam. What are the lessons even day to day, if there are some, that stay with you from your service of this country? Even the small things. Are you punctual? Are you on time?
John and I were both pretty early.
I got that note from John. Can I be there at 12:30? I'm going, John, that is more than punctual.
I do tend to be early. I do tend to get there, and I appreciate groups of people working together. I was an artilleryman. There were anywhere from 5 to 7 of us on the gun at any one time, depending on rotation. But you learn to work really closely with other people. You have to know what they're doing, and they have to know what you're doing, or there's potential to really get hurt. So I think it instilled in me a sense of teamwork, and some other personal habits. I get up at 7 o'clock every morning. Close to 7 o'clock every morning, and then I go downstairs and I make a pot of coffee, and I sit down and take my blood pressure, and then I look at the news and
you're very routine oriented.
Kind of a routine oriented person, which is a very big part of military life. Is a routine.
Does it drive you crazy that I don't tuck in my shirt all the time, Lou?
No, I don't. It doesn't bother me at all. However, I feel like I'm sloppily dressed if my shirt's not tucked in.
Right.
John, what about you when you think about how it's affected you all these years later?
I think that the impact is tremendous, actually. I think the military leaves you with a real conscious look at your value system. And that's something that in these days and times, sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. But military service has you check out your value system on a very regular basis and connect that value system with the value system of the organization and with your own personal moral values that you have. And so that's a lasting impact on my life, and I think on every veteran's life. I'll include Lou.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That signing up and actually paying attention to your value system is something that is critically important. Another major thing is respect for authority. One of the things that the military teaches you, drills into you, pounds into you, whatever it happens to be, is respect for authority. And in these times in America, when you take a look at what's going on around the country, there's a big lack in terms of respect for authority. And whether that's political leadership, whether it's first responder, police, fire, the lack of respect is something that is showing. And to be honest with you, I look at a lot of that and I say, I wonder if they're a vet. Because you know what? A veteran has a very deep sense of respect for authority. Another one that I think happens to all of us in the military is an ability, a consciousness, and an intention to work up and down the ladder in terms of all levels of people. And I think about the ability to work with, if you will, a laborer or a CEO. Your ability to understand and articulate good thinking all up and down the corporate or organizational ladder, that's something that the military does for you very much. So,
Well, in a moment, we're going to get to what the future of service may look like and what our guests think about that. Let me get a couple of phone calls. Amy and John. Amy in Penfield first. Hi, Amy. Go ahead.
Hi. I was just calling, listening to the show, and I've been thinking a lot about this lately. I was raised in the military. My mother was a single mom of 3 kids under the age of 5 and joined the reserves for some extra money, and then came home after her 2-week stint and said she enlisted full time. We went to Fort Bragg. She was an officer. She got her parachute wings at the age of 36, retired after 27 years as a full bird colonel. She served in Iraq. I just, when I hear Pete Hegseth today or Donald Trump today talk about this warrior ethos, I don't know if my mother, who's all of 5'2", she is a tiny lady, is included in that. And, she did face some harassment as a single mom when she joined back in the early 80s. And she had some great commanding officers that respected her and saw her ability. And I don't, the things that I was taught on an Army base, respect and service and honor, I don't feel are shown today when I hear Pete Hegseth or Donald Trump.
So,
talk
Amy,
about
let me just ask you something briefly here. The Secretary of Defense has said that while he acknowledged that in the past he has said that he doesn't think women should be in combat, that he has changed his position on that and that he honors the service of all people. Does that change anything for you?
I think his actions speak louder than words. I think he can say that, but, when he says we're going to get rid of the woke ideology, Army bases were some of the most diverse places I have lived anywhere. And I don't understand what he means by that, because the diversity in the military is its strength.
Did you watch the parade, Amy?
I watched clips of it. We were actually coming back from vacation, so I wasn't able to see most of it, but I don't think I would have. I think it would have just made me mad.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the phone call, and thank you for, I can't, on behalf of everybody, thank your mother, but I'm just going to do that anyway. So thank you for her service and yours, and Amy, thank you for the phone call. Anything you want to add here, John White?
No, I thought that was very, very well said. And once again, the issue of your mom with a service heart to join the reserve, spend 2 weeks, then sign up regular, retire as a bird colonel. There is a service heart that is wonderful. It needs a larger place here in America.
Pretty impressive, huh?
Yes.
Lou Wayne?
Yeah, certainly impressed me. That had to be a very tough road for that woman to hoe back at that time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Amy, for the phone call. Appreciate that. This is John in Rochester next. Hello, John. Go ahead.
Hey, Evan. John Arthur's here in Rochester, New York. I'm retired Army. I moved here 10 years ago from Chicago, and you'd think a big city like Chicago would have a strong veterans role, but I have to tell you, living here in Rochester has been a spiritual godsend, if you will. I have had the best doctors, psychiatrists, dentists, eye people that I ever had. I really admire their professionalism and what they do for us veterans on a daily basis. That being said, I think the whole this country has gone absolutely nuts. I don't recognize it any longer. I just don't.
Can you elaborate a little bit more specifically, John?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a gay man, and this whole woke thing and everything, I just don't get it. And this Pete Hegseth and the Trump administration are a bunch of buffoons. I just, I just don't see where we're going here. And I'm one of the lucky ones. I have a home and a house, and my dog, as you can hear, stop. But it saddens me to see what is going on. I supported Obama. I supported Biden. And I just don't understand. I have a niece who voted for Donald Trump, and that's fine. I don't have any problems with people, doing what they need to do. But my feelings are just, it's just a shame what we're going through right now. And honestly, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Well, John, first of all, thank you for your service and thank you for the phone call. And let me just say again, listeners, callers, guests can say whatever they want. And I'm not trying to steer us away from hard conversations or politics, but this is not supposed to be an expressly political hour, although we've all acknowledged that these days everything gets inflected with politics. Having said that, I want to redirect John's point that he is making and ask our guests a question that comes up from a listener, which is let me pull this back up here. What do your guests think it means to support the troops these days? So what John is saying is he's getting good health care. He's feeling well supported. He's feeling very fortunate in those ways. He's not necessarily feeling that way, perhaps from leadership of the moment. But, John White, you had mentioned possible VA funding cuts. We've seen all kinds of proposed cuts, actual cuts. We understand that certainly a number of veterans who serve in the United States government have had their jobs cut. So in general, what does it mean to support veterans? What does it mean to support troops right now?
Well, I think the support levels start with your basic heart of patriotism. And so once you understand what it means to be and how gifted and blessed we are to be Americans, it starts there. And then the other side of it is just to how do you show support to the service members or to the troops? And you said it. Every time you see a traveler in uniform, every time you see some issue that identifies them as a veteran or as an active duty military personnel, give them the support. Just a hi, hello, thank you for your service. I had one comment one time that said, I heard that saying thank you for your service was offensive to a veteran. Not to this veteran. It's fine. And I think the other thing is And we as grandparents now, used to be as parents, get questions about their children serving in the military or their grandchildren now. And I'm encouraging of that. I think it's a career that can be a short career. It can be 3-4 years, or it can be 27 and 37 years. But encouragement of the value of a military service. And if it's not military service, any service. I mean, I'm a very, very strong proponent of the fact that if you want to serve your country, you can do it in many different ways. It does not have to be military, but there ought to be something bigger than yourself that you contribute to and support. Just once again, I'll go back to the issue of a value system. It changes your opinion on a lot of things when you get involved in some kind of an issue that's bigger than yourself.
Are you worried that we as a society are moving away from seeing and teaching the value of volunteerism, community building? So service in uniform notwithstanding, the general idea of service, the general idea of something bigger than yourself, contributing your time, something that is not about yourself, something bigger than you. Are you worried that we're getting away from that?
I'm worried that there isn't the commitment to that with some of the younger folks than there has been in the past. There's an awful lot of "it's all about me" issue, and so I would like to see even a requirement that there be some kind of a service level to the community, the country, a particular cause, whatever it happens to be, so that everybody spends a couple of years on that track of "it's bigger than me."
Lou, what does it mean to support the troops in 2025?
That's a little bit hard. I think the government officials need to be more out there in terms of supporting troops, and not just words, but there has to be some actions. There has to be legislation. There has to be understanding of where you deploy the military and where you don't. I think that's one thing. I think the military itself, or the Army, I can speak to a situation in the Army where things are much better than they used to be. I have a grandniece at Fort Lewis McChord who just gave birth to twins, and she gets 4 months of maternity leave. There's nowhere else in the country where you get 4 months of maternity leave. So the military is doing its part to support the troops, and I think that's important. As far as volunteerism goes, I think John is right in that the younger people are not into that. If you look at whoever the volunteers are, whatever the organization is, they tend to be senior citizens are the core of our volunteers, and at some point, they can't do what needs to be done. I mean, there's some things require physical effort and endurance and stuff that older folks don't have. So you got to have some younger people to come in to do that work.
You want to add something there, John?
No, I just have another point because I know we're getting short on time. But no, I think he's exactly correct. I support Lou on that. So before we close, I have to make mention, given the 250th birthday of the United States Army on Saturday, that there are two other 250th birthdays this year. The United States Navy on October 13th is 250 years old, and the United States Marine Corps on November 10th is 250 years old. So we got two more big birthdays to go.
Indeed. And let me close with a question. Lou, you brought up, the importance of, respecting service in a way that maybe doesn't take the sacrifices and lives blithely. Vice President Vance, who did serve, was speaking this weekend and said that part of leadership means now never asking someone to fight in a war or fight in a conflict that it is not entirely in our interests and that we are not committed to winning quickly. What do you make of that? That
grates me the wrong way because
I
think of I think of the Ukraine, how terribly they're suffering over there, and how more support from us could change the trajectory of that. And I can see where that's in our interest to do that. I don't know whether the vice president can see that.
John?
I'm totally in agreement with the win quickly issue. Once again, from a combat experience, when we're withheld from using the armament and the power that we have, when there are political considerations that keep us from doing our job, lives get lost. And so if we can get a military and if we can get a political environment where winning the war quickly is important, I'm all for that.
I want to thank our guests for sharing their time. And it's been a little while since we've seen John White, but over the years, listeners may not even realize what John does for this community, with Gold Star families, with so many others. And I just want to thank you for your service for the community. Thank you for your service to the country. Thank you for lending your voice to this program. And it's just lovely to see you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. John is a former infantry captain in the United States Marine Corps, 1966 to 1973. Lou Wayne, I have a lot of nice things to say about you as well, Lou. And I'll just say thank you again for your service. Thank you for sharing your time and your voice and for coming in. Nice to see you here.
It's good to be here. A nice discussion.
Great to have you. Great to have both of you. And from all of us at Connections, it's a big team. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thanks for being part of the conversation here. We are back with you tomorrow on member-supported public media.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.